I was in the middle of an important board meeting when my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. The vibration felt almost accusatory against my thigh as I tried to focus on the quarterly projections being displayed on the oversized screen at the front of the room. And as you can see, our Boston expansion has exceeded expectations by nearly 18%, droned Harrison, our CFO, as he clicked through another slide of colorful charts. The mahogany conference table gleamed under the recessed lighting, surrounded by 12 of the sharpest minds in the business world, all of whom seemed far more engaged than I suddenly was. The buzzing stopped, then started again almost immediately. Whoever was calling wasn't giving up. "James, did you want to weigh in on the marketing strategy?" asked Sarah Chun, tapping her Mont Blanc pen against her leather portfolio. Her keen eyes had caught my momentary distraction. "Absolutely," I replied, straightening my Armani tie. "I think we should." The phone buzzed a third time, and I felt a strange, urgent need to see who was so persistent. "Excuse me for just a moment." I slipped my phone from my pocket, expecting to see my executive assistant's name. Instead, the screen displayed unknown number. Under normal circumstances, I'd have silenced it without a second thought. Reaching this level, CEO of Meridian Enterprises by 40, required ruthless prioritization. But something felt different. A strange, electric sensation traveled up my spine. "Sorry, I need to take this." "It might be about the Singapore deal," I lied smoothly, rising from my chair. The eyes of the board followed me as I stepped into the corridor, the hushed whispers already beginning behind me. The marble hallway of our downtown Chicago headquarters amplified the sound of my Italian leather shoes as I walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. 52 floors below, tiny figures moved about their lives, unaware of the tension building in mine. "James Harrington," I answered, my voice crisp and professional despite the unusual circumstances. "Mr. Harrington?" A woman's voice, soft and trembling. "Not a business associate. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I need help with our daughter." "Our daughter?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I instinctively reached for the window ledge to steady myself. "I think you have the wrong number," I said, though something in her voice, a familiar cadence, perhaps, made my heart race. "It's Ellie," she said. "Eleanor Williams. From Evanston. From 12 years ago." The name unlocked a flood of memories I'd buried beneath balance sheets and merger deals. Eleanor with the chestnut hair and bright green eyes. Eleanor who loved early morning walks along Lake Michigan and indie folk concerts. Eleanor who I'd dated for 6 months during my second year at Northwestern's MBA program before the brutal schedule and my single-minded ambition had driven us apart. "Eleanor," I whispered, turning my back to the boardroom. "I don't understand." "What daughter?" Her shaky exhale carried through the phone. "I never told you. I found out I was pregnant after we split up. You were already in New York by then, starting at Goldman. I decided to do it on my own." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. The methodical, calculated life I'd built, the one where each step was planned with precision, suddenly felt like a house of cards. "A daughter." The word echoed in my mind, foreign yet strangely compelling. "She's 11 now," Eleanor continued, her voice growing more urgent. "Her name is Lily. She's in the hospital. There was an accident at school. She fell during gym class. They think she might need surgery, and I can't make these decisions alone anymore. She keeps asking about you, has been for years. I've shown her your picture in Forbes." My fingers pressed against the cold glass of the window as I struggled to process this information. Outside, the Chicago skyline stood impassive, the same view I'd gazed upon for 8 years since moving the company headquarters here. Yet everything had changed in less than 60 seconds. "Why now?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "After all this time." "I've thought about calling 1,000 times," Eleanor admitted. "But today, seeing her in that hospital bed. James, she has your eyes. Your exact eyes. And she's so brave, but she's scared, and I couldn't keep you separate anymore. It wasn't fair to her. Or to you." I turned back toward the boardroom. Through the glass wall, I could see Harrison still presenting, gesturing emphatically at another projection. Sarah was taking notes. Thomas from legal was checking his watch. My world, the one I understood and controlled, continued without me, while another one I'd never known existed was cracking open, demanding my attention. "Which hospital did you say?" I asked, already loosening my tie. Northwestern Memorial, Pediatric Wing, 4th floor, room 417. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The decision formed itself without conscious thought. Really, the hope in her voice was painful to hear. Yes. I ended the call and took a deep breath, trying to steady myself as I returned to the boardroom. All conversation ceased as I entered. 12 expectant faces turned toward me. I apologize, but I have an urgent personal matter to attend to, I announced, gathering my things. Sarah, can you wrap this up and email me the notes? I'll review them tonight. Of course, Sarah replied, the surprise evident in her voice. In 8 years, I'd never left a board meeting early. Not for anything. Everything all right, James? Asked Richard, the company's founder and chairman emeritus. His bushy white eyebrows furrowed with genuine concern. I'm not sure, I answered honestly, but I need to find out. I left without further explanation, my mind already racing ahead to the hospital, to Eleanor, to a child I never knew existed. As the elevator descended, I caught my reflection in its polished doors, the perfect Windsor knot, the precisely trimmed hair, the confident posture I'd cultivated over years of boardroom battles. For the first time, I wondered what else I'd missed while building my empire. The garage level arrived with a soft ding. I strode to my Tesla, the familiar beep of the door unlocking providing one last moment of normalcy before I stepped into the unknown. As I settled into the driver's seat, I realized my hands were shaking. I, James Harrington, who had faced down hostile takeovers and market crashes without flinching, was terrified of meeting an 11-year-old girl. My daughter. The words still didn't feel real. But I knew, as I pulled out into the Chicago traffic, that my life would never be the same again. Chicago traffic was merciless as always, crawling along Michigan Avenue with painful sluggishness. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel as my mind raced faster than my car ever could. I'd always prided myself on being unflappable, the CEO who thrived under pressure, but this was different. This wasn't a hostile takeover or a market crash. This was personal in a way nothing in my life had been for years. Our daughter, I whispered to myself, testing how the words felt in my mouth. Strange, foreign, yet somehow not entirely unwelcome. A taxi cut me off, and I slammed on the brakes, the movement jolting me back to reality. The reality where I, James Harrington, might be a father. The thought was so disorienting I almost missed my turn. Northwestern Memorial Hospital loomed ahead, its modern glass facade reflecting the cloudy Chicago sky. I'd donated to their cardiac wing 3 years ago, attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony, shaken hands, and smiled for photographs. Never once had I imagined returning as a father? The words still wouldn't quite settle in my mind. The hospital parking garage was a concrete maze, but I barely noticed as I navigated its levels, finding a spot near the elevator. My usual fastidiousness about door dings and careless drivers completely forgotten. I parked haphazardly and practically jumped out of the car. The pediatric wing was bright and cheerful in that forced way hospitals have of trying to mask their essential purpose. Cartoon characters decorated the walls, and a volunteer was reading to a small group of children in a waiting area. I approached the nurse's station, suddenly aware that I had no idea what to say. I'm looking for Lily Williams, I managed, my voice sounding unfamiliar even to my own ears. Room 417. The nurse glanced up, her eyes widening slightly with recognition. Being on the cover of Forbes last year had made my face more recognizable than I sometimes preferred. Are you family? She asked, already knowing the answer she expected. I'm her father, I said, the words emerging before I could consider them. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't a truth I'd known until 40 minutes ago either. She nodded and pointed down a hallway decorated with butterflies. 4th door on the left. Her mother is with her. My feet felt leaden as I walked. What would I say? What could I possibly say to explain my 11-year absence? I paused outside the door, straightening my tie out of habit before realizing how absurd the gesture was. This wasn't a business meeting. This was meeting my child. I knocked softly before pushing the door open. The room was semi-dark, the blinds partially drawn against the afternoon sun. A TV mounted on the wall played a cartoon with the volume low. And there, sitting in a chair beside the bed, was Eleanor. 12 years had been kind to her. Her chestnut hair was shorter now, falling just past her shoulders instead of to her waist as I remembered. A few strands of silver threaded through it. She wore simple jeans and a navy sweater, her posture tense as she looked up at me. "James," she said, her voice catching. "You actually came." I said I would. I replied, stepping further into the room. And then my eyes fell on the small figure in the bed. Lily was pale against the white hospital sheets, her right leg elevated and encased in a temporary cast. And 4-line ran into her left arm, and a pulse monitor was clipped to her finger. But what struck me most were her eyes, my eyes, exactly as Eleanor had said. The exact shade of blue-gray that looked back at me from the mirror every morning. Her hair was Eleanor's, rich brown with a slight wave, but her features were a perfect mix of us both. "Is that him?" Lily asked, her voice small but surprisingly steady. Eleanor nodded, motioning for me to come closer. "Lily, this is James Harrington. You are your father." I approached the bed, entirely unsure of what to do or say. All my years of negotiation skills and boardroom rhetoric were useless here. "Hello, Lily," I managed, attempting a smile that felt painfully inadequate. She studied me with an intensity that was unnerving, those familiar eyes scanning my face as if memorizing it. "You look like your pictures," she finally said, "but taller." A laugh escaped me, unexpected and genuine. "I'm 6'2". Most people look taller in person than in pictures. "Mom says I'll be tall too," she replied, a hint of pride in her voice. "I'm already the 3rd tallest in my class." Lily broke her femur, Eleanor explained, gesturing to the leg. "She fell from the climbing wall in gym class. The doctors say she needs surgery to set the bone properly. Pins that will grow with her." The medical details somehow made this more real. This wasn't some abstract concept of a child. This was a girl with a broken leg who needed surgery, who needed her father. "What do the doctors recommend exactly?" I asked, slipping back into the familiar comfort of gathering information, assessing options. Eleanor handed me a folder. "Everything's in here. The orthopedic surgeon wants to operate tomorrow morning. It's fairly routine, but it's still surgery." I finished, understanding her concern. I opened the folder and began scanning the documents inside. Surgical consent forms, doctor's notes, insurance paperwork. "Mom said you run a big company," Lily said, interrupting my reading. "What kind?" I looked up, meeting her curious gaze. "Technology mostly. We develop software that helps businesses communicate better." "Is it like Instagram?" I smiled despite myself. "Not exactly. It's more for people who work in offices." "Oh," she sounded disappointed. "So it's boring adult stuff." "Lily," Eleanor admonished, but I shook my head. "No, she's right. It's pretty boring unless you're into that sort of thing." I set the folder aside and moved closer to the bed. "What are you into, Lily?" Her face brightened. "Soccer mostly. I play center midfielder. And I like science. We're studying the solar system right now. I can name all the planets and their moons." "That's impressive," I said, genuinely meaning it. "I would have made varsity this year," she added, glancing down at her leg with a frown. "But now, the surgery will help you heal properly," I assured her, surprised by my own certainty. "And you'll be back on the field before you know it." Eleanor's eyes met mine over Lily's head, a mixture of gratitude and something more complex in them. She looked exhausted, I realized, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that comes from hours of worry. "Have you eaten?" I asked her quietly. She shook her head. I didn't want to leave her. I turned back to Lily. "Would it be okay if your mom want to get some coffee? I could stay with you for a bit." Lily nodded, though I caught a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. Eleanor hesitated, then stood, touching Lily's hand gently. "I'll be right back, sweetie. Press the call button if you need anything, okay?" "I know, Mom," Lily said with the mild exasperation of a child who's heard the same instructions many times. When Eleanor had gone, an awkward silence fell between us. Lily fiddled with the edge of her blanket while I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. "Did you know about me?" she finally asked, her voice small but direct. No preamble, no softening of the blow. Just the question that cut straight to the heart. I could have lied, could have constructed some palatable story about circumstance and timing. But those blue-gray eyes, my eyes, demanded honesty. "No," I admitted. "I didn't know about you until your mom called me today. If I had known." But I couldn't finish the sentence. Would I have done anything differently? Would I have given up the relentless climb to success that had defined my 20s and 30s? I wasn't sure, and I wouldn't lie to her. "It's okay," Lily said, though it clearly wasn't. Mom says you were really busy becoming important. The simple assessment stung with its accuracy. I acknowledged. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't have wanted to know you, Lily. She studied me again with that unnerving intensity. Are you going to disappear again after my leg gets fixed? The question hit me like a physical blow. No, I said firmly, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. No, I'm not going to disappear. Promise, she pressed, skepticism evident in the set of her jaw, another expression I recognized from my own mirror. I promise, I said, and as the words left my mouth, I knew they were true. Whatever came next, whatever complications arose from this revelation, I wouldn't vanish from Lily's life again. Eleanor returned with 2 coffees, handing me one without asking if I wanted it. She remembered, black, no sugar. It was strange how such a small detail could survive 12 years of silence. We stepped into the hallway while a nurse checked Lily's vitals. The doctor will be by soon, Eleanor said, sipping her coffee, still with too much cream, I noticed. He'll explain the surgery in more detail. I nodded, leaning against the wall beside a cheerful poster about hand hygiene. She's remarkable, I said quietly. Lily. A small, proud smile curved Eleanor's lips. She is smart, stubborn, way too brave for her own good. That's how she broke her leg in the first place. Kept climbing even after the teacher told everyone to come down. The smile faded. She reminds me of you sometimes. The way she tackles problems. Never gives up. The comparison shouldn't have pleased me as much as it did. Eleanor, I need to ask. Why didn't you tell me? Back then, she looked down at her coffee cup, her fingers tightening around it. You were already in New York. You'd made it clear that your career came first, which wasn't wrong, James. We wanted different things. And then when I found out, she exhaled slowly. I called your number, actually, 3 times. Left messages about needing to talk. You never called back. I remembered those months after business school, the brutal hours at Goldman, sleeping at my desk, drowning in work. I got a new phone, I said, the explanation sounding pathetic even to my own ears. New number. Part of the relocation package. I never got your messages. And I took that as confirmation. She replied, no accusation in her voice. Just life pointing us in different directions. By the time I was showing, I convinced myself that telling you would only complicate things. You'd feel obligated, trapped. I didn't want that. So you did it all alone? I couldn't keep the dismay from my voice. Not entirely. My parents helped until they moved to Arizona. My sister Kate's been amazing. And I built a life, James. A good one. I teach 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. We have a little house in Evanston. Lily has friends, activities. We've been okay. But there was a weariness in her eyes that spoke of the 1,000 small challenges she'd faced without a partner. The sleepless nights, the financial strains, the endless juggling act of single parenthood. I should have known, I said, the words heavy with regret. Somehow, I should have known. How? She asked reasonably. I didn't tell you. I made that choice. And most days, I've been at peace with it. But then Lily started asking questions. She Googled you last year, you know. Came running into the kitchen one day shouting that her dad was famous. I winced. What did you tell her? The truth. That we dated in graduate school. That you didn't know about her. That it was complicated. Thank you for that, I said. For not making me the villain. You're not a villain, James. Just a man who had different priorities. And apparently a very efficient assistant who screens your calls. A hint of the old Eleanor humor flashed in her eyes. Sarah, I said. She's terrifying. But I'll have to thank her for putting this call through. Eleanor glanced at her watch. The surgeon should be here soon. You don't have to stay, James. I know you probably have a dozen fires to put out at work. I'm staying, I said firmly. And not just for today. She looked skeptical. You have a life, James. A company to run. We can't just insert ourselves into that. Watch me, I replied, with the same determination that had built Meridian from a startup to a Fortune 500 company. This changes everything, Eleanor. A nurse emerged from Lily's room. She's asking for both of you, she said with a smile. Inside, Lily had the TV remote and was flipping through channels with the bored restlessness particular to hospitalized children. She brightened when we entered. They're bringing me lunch soon, she announced. But it's probably going to be gross. Hospital food usually is, I agreed, taking the chair on the opposite side of her bed from Eleanor. Are you guys talking about me? Lily asked bluntly. Out in the hall, Eleanor and I exchanged glances. A little bit, she admitted. And about what happens next? Is he coming to live with us? Lily asked, her tone casual though her eyes were watchful. No, sweetie, Eleanor said gently. Mr. Harrington has his own home. James, I corrected. Or whatever you're comfortable with, Lily. I couldn't quite suggest Dad. It felt presumptuous, unearned. Where do you live? Lily asked. Downtown, in a high-rise on Lakeshore Drive. Her eyes widened. Like in a penthouse? With a pool and stuff? It does have a pool, I admitted. And a view of the lake. Do you have any pets? The rapid-fire questions caught me off guard. No pets. My schedule isn't really fair to animals. We have a cat named Buckley, Lily informed me. He's fat and orange and sleeps on my feet. Sounds like a good cat, I replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. A knock at the door interrupted us as a tall man in a white coat entered, carrying a tablet. Good afternoon, he said briskly. I'm Dr. Chun, the orthopedic surgeon. He explained the procedure in detail, how they would realign the broken bone and secure it with pins that would remain as Lily grew. The surgery would take about 2 hours, and she would need to stay in the hospital for 2 to 3 days afterward. Any questions? Dr. Chun asked, looking between Eleanor and me. What's the recovery timeline? I asked. Lily plays soccer. She's looking at 6 to 8 weeks in a cast, then physical therapy. Full recovery for sports, probably 4 to 6 months, but she's young. Kids heal faster than adults. Lily's face fell at the news. But that's the whole season. I'm afraid so, Dr. Chin said kindly. But with proper healing and PT, you'll be stronger for next season. After he left, Lily was quiet, staring at the ceiling. This sucks, she finally said, her voice thick. Yeah, it does, I agreed, earning a surprised look from Eleanor. But you know what? We'll make it suck less. How? Lily challenged. Good question. I was making promises I had no idea how to keep, but that had never stopped me before. Well, first, we get through the surgery. Then we make a plan. I'm pretty good at plans. Mom says you're good at making money, Lily said. She says you're richer than Scrooge McDuck. Eleanor flushed. Lily, I did not say that. You said he was loaded, Lily insisted. I laughed, the tension breaking. I've done okay, I admitted. But money's just a tool, Lily. It's what you do with it that matters. A memory surfaced suddenly, my own father saying almost the same words to me. Frank Harrington had been a bank manager in Cleveland, comfortable but never wealthy. He died of a heart attack my sophomore year of college, leaving me with a modest inheritance I'd parlayed into business school tuition and a few starter investments. I'd thought of him less and less as my own fortune grew, as if success had somehow distanced me from his middle-class wisdom. What would you do if you were super rich? I asked Lily, genuinely curious. She considered this seriously. I'd buy a professional soccer team, she decided. And I'd make the players visit kids in hospitals and stuff. And I'd probably get a really cool car. What kind? A Jeep Wrangler, she said promptly. Bright yellow with big tires. I smiled. Good choice. Practical, but fun. What kind of car do you have? She asked. A Tesla. She wrinkled her nose. Those are okay, I guess. But they're too quiet. Cars should make noise. I'll remember that next time, I promised, already mentally revisiting my vehicle choices. The thought startled me. Was I already reshaping my life around her preferences? Eleanor was watching our exchange with a complex expression, part amusement, part wariness. Lunch should be here soon, she said. James, will you stay? The question carried weight beyond the immediate offer. Will you stay for lunch? Will you stay for the surgery? Will you stay in her life? Yes, I said, holding Eleanor's gaze. I'd like that. A nurse appeared with Lily's lunch tray, a sad-looking sandwich, some apple slices, and a carton of milk. I told you it would be gross, Lily said triumphantly. I pulled out my phone. How about I order us something better? There's a great Italian place that delivers. Do you like pasta? Lily's face lit up. Can I get spaghetti and meatballs? Absolutely. As I placed the order, I caught Eleanor watching me, her expression guarded. You don't have to do this, she said quietly when Lily became absorbed in a TV show. Do what? Swoop in with grand gestures. She doesn't need to be spoiled, James. She needs consistency, reliability. The words stung, but I recognized their truth. I know, I said, and I'm not trying to buy her affection. But I have 11 years to make up for, Eleanor. 11 years of birthdays and soccer games and school plays. I've missed everything. That wasn't your fault, she reminded me gently. Maybe not, I conceded. But it's still gone. I can't get it back. All I can do is be here now. She studied me for a long moment, searching for something in my face. You've changed, she finally said. The James I knew would have written a check and sent a lawyer. I considered this, recognizing the truth in her assessment. Maybe I needed to change, I said quietly. Maybe this is who I was supposed to be all along. The words hung between us, fragile and honest. Outside the window, Chicago continued its relentless pace. But in this room, time seemed to move differently, more deliberately, with the weight of the past and the possibility of the future balanced delicately in each moment. The Italian food arrived, filling Lily's hospital room with the comforting aroma of garlic and tomato sauce. I watched with unexpected pleasure as she twirled spaghetti around her fork with the careful concentration only children can muster for such tasks. Eleanor ate more hesitantly, as if unsure how to navigate this sudden shift in our long-established separation. You have meetings you're missing, she said quietly while Lily was absorbed in her meal. I shrugged. Nothing that can't wait. The James Harrington I knew would never say that, she replied, her tone somewhere between teasing and accusatory. Maybe I'm not quite the same James Harrington. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure if it was true or simply what I wanted to be true in this moment. The afternoon passed in a blur of medical consultations and paperwork. I found myself signing forms as Lily's father, the words sending a strange jolt through me each time I wrote them. The surgery was scheduled for 7:30 the next morning. Lily would need to fast after midnight. You should go home, Eleanor told me around 6, as the evening shift nurses came on duty. Get some rest. She'll need to sleep soon anyway. I hesitated, reluctant to leave now that I'd found them. Will you be staying here overnight? She nodded. They have a fold-out chair. It's not the first time I've slept in a hospital room. Of course it wasn't. She'd been doing this alone for 11 years. All the fevers, injuries, and childhood illnesses. I'd missed every single one. I'll come back early tomorrow, I promised. Before they take her in, Lily looked up from her tablet, which Eleanor had brought from home. You're really coming back? The uncertainty in her voice twisted something in my chest. Absolutely. I'll be here by 6. She studied me again with those unnerving blue-gray eyes. Okay, she said finally, as if making an important decision. See you tomorrow. I found myself driving home in a daze, the Chicago skyline blazing against the darkening sky. My penthouse felt emptier than usual when I entered, 67 floors above the city, decorated by a professional with pristine furniture that rarely saw use. I wandered from the marble foyer into the living room, barely seeing the lake view that had cost me millions. The blinking light on my home phone caught my attention. 8 messages. I pressed play. James, it's Sarah. The board is concerned about your sudden departure. Call me as soon as possible. James, Richard here. Hope everything's all right. Give me a call when you can. Mr. Harrington, this is Curtis from Legal. We need your signature on the Singapore paperwork before noon tomorrow. One after another, the demands of my carefully constructed life piled up, suddenly feeling insignificant compared to the revelation of the day. I poured myself 2 fingers of Macallan and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the lights of boats on Lake Michigan. I had a daughter. The thought was beginning to settle, losing some of its initial shock, but none of its gravity. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, hesitating only briefly before searching Eleanor Williams Evanston. Her professional page at Lincoln Elementary appeared, showing a smiling photo and a brief bio. Ms. Williams has been teaching 3rd grade for 9 years. She enjoys hiking, reading, and spending time with her daughter. Such simple words to encapsulate a life I'd known nothing about. I clicked through to the school's faculty page, finding more photos of Eleanor at school events, a fall festival, a science fair, a holiday concert. In one, she stood with her arm around a younger Lily, both beaming at the camera, matching dimples in their left cheeks. Before I could stop myself, I was dialing her cell number. James, she answered, her voice hushed. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured her quickly. Is Lily asleep? Just dozed off. The painkillers make her drowsy. I trailed off, suddenly unsure why I'd called. I wanted to check in. A pause. That's nice of you, Eleanor, I said, the words forming themselves without conscious thought. I want to be involved. In Lily's life. In whatever capacity you're comfortable with. Her soft exhale came through the line. It's been just us for so long, James. I know, and I'm not trying to disrupt that. But she's my daughter too. I want to know her. To be there for her. And what happens when the novelty wears off? She asked, the question gentle but direct. When board meetings and business trips start to seem more important again. That won't happen, I said firmly. You can't know that. The James I knew was absolutely dedicated to his career. Ambitious. Focused. I've achieved those ambitions, I pointed out. Built the company, made the fortune. Maybe now it's time for something else. The silence stretched between us, filled with 11 years of separate lives. She has your chin, Eleanor finally said. And the way she furrows her brow when she's thinking. I used to look at her and see you, even when I was trying not to. The revelation hit me with unexpected force. All these years, Eleanor had been raising a child who reminded her daily of me. How difficult that must have been. I'm sorry, I said, for not being there, for not knowing. We made the best decisions we could with the information we had, she replied. That's all anyone can do. After we hung up, I found myself unable to sleep. I paced the minimalist expanse of my living room, then pulled out my phone again and did what I always did when faced with a challenge: research. I read about femur fractures in children, about recovery times and physical therapy. I researched soccer programs for kids with previous injuries, found specialists who worked with young athletes. Around midnight, I realized I was deep into an article about college recruitment for women's soccer. Lily was 11, and I was already planning for her college athletic career. I laughed at myself, a slightly hysterical edge to the sound in my empty penthouse. I forced myself to sleep for a few hours, then showered and dressed with more care than usual. Not my standard power suit. That seemed wrong for a hospital, but dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that my personal shopper had insisted brought out my eyes. My eyes. Lily's eyes. The early morning drive to the hospital was surreal, the streets of Chicago nearly empty at 5:30 a.m. I stopped at a 24-hour bakery in Streeterville that I knew made excellent pastries and bought an assortment, along with 2 large coffees, one black for me, one with extra cream for Eleanor. The pediatric wing was hushed when I arrived, the overhead lights dimmed for the children still sleeping. I nodded to the night shift nurse and made my way to room 417, knocking softly before entering. Eleanor was curled awkwardly on the reclining chair, a thin hospital blanket pulled around her shoulders. She blinked awake as I entered, looking momentarily confused. You actually came, she murmured, echoing her words from yesterday. I said I would. I replied, offering her the coffee. How is she? We both looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow. In sleep, the resemblance between us was even more pronounced, the straight nose, the set of the jaw. She was nervous last night, Eleanor whispered. Trying not to show it, but I could tell. She asked more questions about you. What kind of questions? If you liked sports when you were a kid. If you're afraid of anything. If you ever broke any bones. I smiled slightly. What did you tell her? That you played baseball in high school. That you're afraid of heights. Or at least you were in grad school. And that you broke your wrist skateboarding when you were 14. The fact that she remembered these details about me after so many years was both touching and unsettling. All true, I confirmed. I didn't have answers for all her questions, Eleanor admitted. She wants to know you. Before I could respond, a nurse entered to check Lily's vitals and prepare her for surgery. The girl woke slowly, groggy and disoriented until her eyes landed on me. You came back, she said, her voice thick with sleep. I promised I would. I replied, moving to her bedside. How are you feeling? Hungry, she complained. They won't let me eat anything. That's just until after the surgery, I assured her. I brought pastries for after. Her face brightened. What kind? All kinds. Chocolate croissants, bear claws, those things with the fruit in the middle. Danish. Eleanor supplied, smiling despite herself. The pre-surgery preparations moved quickly. Dr. Chung came by for a final check, followed by the anesthesiologist who explained what would happen in child-friendly terms. Lily listened with surprising composure, asking pointed questions that made the doctors exchange impressed glances. She gets that from you, Eleanor murmured. I would have just nodded and pretended to understand. Finally, it was time. Orderlies came to wheel Lily's bed to the operating room. Eleanor and I walked alongside as far as we were allowed, each holding one of Lily's hands. "We'll be right here when you wake up," Eleanor promised, leaning down to kiss her forehead. I hesitated, then squeezed Lily's hand. "You're going to do great," I told her. "You're braver than I ever was." She looked up at me solemnly. "Will you still be here? After?" "Yes," I said with complete certainty. "I'll be right here." We watched as they wheeled her through the double doors, leaving us standing in the hallway, suddenly without purpose. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly, her lower lip trembling. Without thinking, I put my arm around her shoulders. She stiffened momentarily, then leaned into me, accepting the comfort. "She'll be okay," I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. "Dr. Chun is the best." Eleanor nodded against my shoulder. "I know. It's just scary," I finished. "Even when you know it's routine." She pulled back, studying my face. "How did you become so understanding overnight?" I shrugged. "I haven't. I'm terrified and trying not to show it." "Come on, let's find the waiting room. It's going to be a long 2 hours." The surgical waiting room was painted a cheerful yellow that did nothing to dispel the anxiety of the families gathered there. Eleanor and I sat side by side, not quite comfortable, but bound by our shared concern for Lily. The pastries I'd brought remained untouched between us. "I should call work," I said, breaking the silence that had stretched for nearly 20 minutes. Eleanor nodded. "Go ahead. I need to text my sister anyway. She's watching Buckley." I stepped into the hallway and called Sarah, my executive assistant. She answered on the first ring. "James, thank God. The board is in an uproar. Harrison is threatening to call an emergency meeting, and the Singapore team is demanding to know why you missed last night's conference call." I leaned against the wall, watching a group of medical students hurry past. "I need you to clear my schedule for the next few days." "What?" "James, you have the quarterly review tomorrow, the investor meeting on Thursday, and all of it." "Sarah," I interrupted. "Family emergency." A stunned silence followed. In 8 years, I'd never used those words. "Family?" she finally asked. "Is it your mother? I thought she was in Florida." "She is. It's complicated. I'll explain later. Just tell everyone I'll be unavailable until further notice. Richard can handle the quarterly review. He wrote half of it anyway." "This isn't like you," Sarah said, concern evident in her voice. "Are you okay?" Was I? I honestly wasn't sure. "I'm fine. Something unexpected has come up, but it's nothing to worry about. I'll call you later with more details." I ended the call before she could ask more questions, then hesitated before making one more. My mother answered after several rings, her voice bright with the artificial cheer she'd adopted since my father's death. "James, what a lovely surprise. I was just telling Marjorie from the clubhouse about your article in Forbes. So handsome in that photo." "Hi, Mom," I said, already regretting the impulse to call. "How's Florida?" "Oh, just wonderful. 82 degrees yesterday. You really should visit more often. The Henderson sun comes down every other month." "I'll try," I promised, the same response I'd given for years. "Listen, Mom, I have some news." "Good news, I hope? Another award? Or have you finally met someone? You know I worry about you all alone in that big apartment." I took a deep breath. "I have a daughter." The silence was so complete, I thought the connection had dropped. "Mom, I don't understand," she finally said, her voice smaller. "You've never mentioned being involved with anyone seriously enough to." "How old is this child?" 11, I admitted. "Her name is Lily. I just found out about her yesterday. She's in surgery right now, broken leg." 11 years, my mother repeated slowly. "And you never knew? How is that possible, James?" "Who is the mother?" "Eleanor Williams. From Northwestern. I've told you about her." "The teacher?" "From graduate school." A long pause. "She kept your child from you for 11 years? "James, it wasn't like that," I interrupted, surprisingly defensive of Eleanor. "It's complicated. The important thing is that I know now, and I'm going to be involved in Lily's life." Another silence. "I'm a grandmother," she finally said, wonder mixing with hurt in her voice. "For 11 years, I've been a grandmother and didn't know it. I hadn't even thought about that aspect, how this revelation rippled outward, affecting not just me, but my family as well. I'm sorry, Mom. I know this is a shock. When can I meet her?" The hurt was giving way to excitement. "I could fly up to Chicago next week. Or you could bring her down here. The weather is beautiful, And there's a wonderful children's museum in. Let's take it slow, I cautioned. She's just had surgery, and this is all new for everyone. Let me talk to Eleanor, see what she thinks. Of course, Mom agreed, though I could hear the impatience beneath her acquiescence. But soon, James. I've missed so much already. By the time I returned to the waiting room, Eleanor was pacing, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Everything okay? I asked. She nodded tersely. Kate's fine with keeping Buckley a few more days. My principal is covering my class. I just hate waiting. Me too, I admitted. I just called my mother. Eleanor's eyes widened. You told her about Lily? She's a grandmother. She deserves to know. Eleanor sank back into her chair. I never thought about that. Your parents. I should have. My father died, I said quietly. Sophomore year of college. Heart attack. Oh, James. I'm sorry. I didn't know. It was a long time ago. I sat beside her. My mother will want to meet Lily. She's already planning it. A small smile tugged at Eleanor's lips. Is she still the whirlwind I remember from graduation? Worse since she retired to Florida. Nothing but time and energy. Lily would like that, I think. She's only had my parents and Kate. More. Family would be good for her. She hesitated. Are you? Is there anyone else in your life who needs to know about this? The polite way of asking if I was involved with someone. No, I said simply. No one serious. Not for a while. She nodded, seeming relieved. Me neither. There was someone last year, a history teacher at Lily's school. But it didn't work out. I wanted to ask why, but wasn't sure if I had the right. We lapsed into silence again, the minutes dragging by. Finally, a nurse appeared at the doorway. William's family? The surgery went well. Dr. Chin will be out to speak with you shortly, and then you can see your daughter in recovery. Eleanor sagged with relief, tears springing to her eyes. Without thinking, I took her hand, squeezing it gently. To my surprise, she squeezed back. Dr. Chin arrived a few minutes later, still in his surgical scrubs. The procedure went perfectly, he assured us. We placed the pins exactly as planned. She'll be in recovery for about an hour, then back to her room. She's a tough kid. Didn't even need as much anesthesia as we expected. When can she go home? Eleanor asked. Barring any complications, likely tomorrow afternoon. We'll fit her with a proper cast before discharge, and she'll need to follow up with our orthopedic clinic in 10 days. I made a mental note of these details, already planning how to rearrange my schedule. Once Dr. Chen left, Eleanor turned to me. You don't have to wait around, James. They said it'll be an hour before we can see her. I'm staying, I replied simply. I promised her I'd be here when she woke up. Eleanor studied me with the same intensity Lily had displayed. This isn't just a novelty for you, is it? Finding out you have a child. No, I said firmly. It's not. Because Lily's already asking when she can see your penthouse. When she can meet your mother. She's building expectations, James. If you disappear after the initial excitement wears off, it will devastate her. The thought of hurting Lily sent a sharp pain through my chest. I won't disappear, I promised. This changes everything, Eleanor. My priorities, my schedule, all of it. She looked skeptical. You've spent years building your company. Being available 24/7, making deals, chasing success. Can you really just step back from that? It was a fair question. Before yesterday, Meridian had been my entire life. I'd sacrificed relationships, vacations, even regular sleep for its growth. Could I really reorder my existence so dramatically? I don't know exactly how it will work, I admitted. But I know I have to try. She's my daughter. Eleanor's expression softened. It won't be easy. She has school, friends, activities. A whole life in Evanston. And I have my job, my routine. We can't just adapt to your schedule. I know that. I'm the one who needs to adapt. I ran a hand through my hair, a nervous habit from childhood. I've bought into this idea that success means being constantly available, constantly working. But what's the point of all that if I'm missing the things that really matter? That doesn't sound like the James Harrington who left for New York 12 years ago, Eleanor observed. Maybe finding out about Lily is making me reassess some things, I said. Or maybe I was already starting to question it all. The penthouse feels empty most nights. The board meetings all blur together. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. But yesterday was the first time in years I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Eleanor looked away, blinking rapidly. Don't make promises you can't keep, James. Not to her. I won't, I assured her. Whatever happens between us, and I know that's complicated, I want to be a father to Lily. A real one, not just a name on a birth certificate or a check in the mail. She nodded slowly. Okay, we'll figure it out. One step at a time. An hour later, we were allowed into the recovery room. Lily was pale and groggy, her right leg now encased in a temporary cast with drainage tubes. She blinked slowly as we approached. "Mom," she murmured. "I'm here, sweetheart," Eleanor said, taking her hand gently. "The surgery went great. Your leg is all fixed up." Lily's eyes drifted to me, standing awkwardly at the foot of the bed. "You stayed," she said, her voice slurred from the anesthesia. "I promised I would," I replied, moving closer. A small smile curved her lips. "Scoot, did you bring those pastries?" I laughed, relief flooding through me. "They're waiting for you in your room. As soon as the doctor says you can eat." She nodded, her eyelids already drooping. "Don't go away again," she murmured as she drifted back to sleep. "I won't," I whispered, more to myself than to her sleeping form. "I won't." Later, as Lily slept in her hospital room, Eleanor and I sat in the small visitors area down the hall, picking at sandwiches from the cafeteria. "We need to talk about practical things," she said. "Visitation, medical decisions, school events." "Joint custody?" I suggested tentatively. She sighed. "That's complicated, James. Legally, emotionally, practically. Let's start smaller. Maybe dinner once a week? You could come to Evanston, get to know her routine, her friends." "I'd like that," I said honestly. "And maybe sometimes she could stay with me. When she's recovered enough. I have a guest room I could set up for her." Eleanor nodded slowly. "We can work up to that. But James, she's not a business deal. You can't just throw money and efficiency at this and expect perfect results. There will be awkward moments, arguments, days when she's not charming or interesting. Are you ready for that?" "No," I admitted. "But I want to learn." She studied me for a long moment, then finally smiled. A real smile, not the guarded one she'd been offering. "You know what? I actually believe you." The next 6 weeks unfolded in a blur of hospital visits, work negotiations, and tentative steps into fatherhood. Lily was discharged the day after surgery, returning to Eleanor's cozy Craftsman in Evanston. I found myself driving the 20 minutes from downtown to the northern suburb with increasing frequency, my Tesla becoming a familiar sight on their quiet, tree-lined street. My first visit to their home had been a revelation. The two-story house with its wide front porch and blue shutters couldn't have been more different from my sleek downtown penthouse. Inside, it was warm and lived in, family photos crowding the walls, mismatched furniture that spoke of comfort rather than design, Lily's soccer trophies arranged proudly on a shelf. Buckley, the fat orange cat, had regarded me with feline suspicion from his perch on the window seat. "It's not much," Eleanor had said, watching me take it all in. "It's perfect," I'd replied, meaning it. Now, 6 weeks later, I pulled into their driveway on a crisp October evening, carrying a bag of groceries and a small wrapped package. Today was a milestone, Lily's first physical therapy appointment, and the day she would finally trade her full-leg cast for a walking boot. "James," Lily called as I entered, using the key Eleanor had hesitantly provided 2 weeks ago. She was propped on the living room couch, her casted leg elevated on pillows, laptop balanced on her stomach. "Did you bring the stuff?" "Hello to you too," I laughed, setting down the grocery bag. "Yes, I brought everything on the list, including the ice cream." "You're the best," she declared, closing her laptop. "Mom's upstairs getting ready. She's nervous about the doctor's appointment." I wasn't surprised. Eleanor worried about everything related to Lily, a protective instinct honed by years of solo parenting. "How about you?" "Nervous?" Lily shrugged. "Not really. Just ready to get this thing off. It itches." I placed the small package beside her. "This is for after, when you've got the boot on." Her eyes lit up. "Can I open it now?" "It'll be more meaningful later," I hedged, heading toward the kitchen. "Let me start dinner." Cooking had never been my strong suit. Before Lily, I'd subsisted largely on delivery and restaurant meals. But I'd been learning, taking weekend cooking classes and practicing in my rarely used kitchen. Tonight's menu was simple but ambitious for my skill level. Homemade pasta carbonara, Caesar salad, and garlic bread. Eleanor appeared in the kitchen doorway as I was cracking eggs into a bowl. She'd changed from her teaching clothes into jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. "You don't have to cook," she said, though we both knew it had become our routine. Me preparing dinner while she helped Lily with homework or graded papers. "I want to," I replied, focusing intently on separating egg yolks. "Besides, I'm getting better. Last week I only set off the smoke alarm once." She smiled, leaning against the counter. "True. Your learning curve is impressive." It was a small compliment, but I treasured it. These past weeks had been a delicate dance between us, establishing boundaries, negotiating the terms of our co-parenting, finding a rhythm that worked for all three of us without disrupting the life Eleanor and Lily had built. The board finally approved my new schedule. I told her, reaching for the pancetta I'd diced earlier. 3 days in the office, 2 working remotely, and no international travel without at least 2 weeks' notice. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "How did Harrison take that?" "Better than expected. Turns out he's been angling for more responsibility anyway." I tossed the pancetta into a hot pan, watching it sizzle. Sarah, on the other hand, thinks I'm having a midlife crisis. "Are you?" Eleanor asked, only half joking. I considered the question as I stirred the pancetta. If a midlife crisis means realizing your priorities were skewed and trying to fix them, then maybe. But it doesn't feel like a crisis. It feels like clarity. She studied me with that thoughtful expression I'd come to know well. "You've surprised me these past weeks, James. I didn't think you'd stick with this. Coming to Evanston for dinner, attending Lily's doctor's appointments, helping with homework. I've surprised myself," I admitted. But it's been the best kind of surprise. The physical therapy appointment went better than expected. Dr. Chin declared Lily's healing remarkable and replaced the bulky cast with a sleek black walking boot. The physical therapist, a cheerful woman named Marisol, guided Lily through her first exercises, praising her determination. "Can I play soccer again?" Lily asked, the question she'd been holding onto for weeks. "Not quite yet," Marisol cautioned. "But if you follow the PT program, you could be ready for spring season. Maybe even as a starter." Lily's face lit up, and she turned to me with a grin that made my chest tighten with unexpected emotion. "Did you hear that? Spring season." "I heard," I said, returning her smile. "But only if you do all your exercises. No shortcuts." Back home, Lily finally opened my gift, a custom soccer jersey with Harrington printed on the back. Her eyes widened as she ran her fingers over the letters. "Mom wouldn't let me put your name on my jersey before," she said quietly. "She said it would confuse people." Eleanor looked away, but not before I caught the flash of guilt in her eyes. "Things are different now," she said softly. "Does this mean I can tell people you're my dad?" Lily asked, looking at me with those familiar eyes. "Like officially?" I glanced at Eleanor, who nodded slightly. "Yes," I said, "if that's what you want." "It is," Lily declared firmly. "Grace and Zoe don't believe me when I say my dad's a CEO. Now I have proof." I laughed, but inside, a warm feeling spread through me. My dad. Such simple words, but they held a world of meaning. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Eleanor and I sat on the front porch swing, mugs of tea in hand. The October night was cool, but not yet cold, the street quiet except for the occasional car passing by. We'd fallen into this habit. These late evening conversations after Lily was asleep, where we cautiously rebuilt the bridge between our past and present. "She wants to tell people you're her father," Eleanor said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Does that bother you?" I asked carefully. She considered this, watching the steam rise from her mug. "No, it feels right actually. You've earned it these past weeks." "I've barely started," I replied. 11 years to make up for. "You can't think of it that way, James. You'll drive yourself crazy trying to compensate for lost time." She turned toward me. "Just be here now. That's what matters to her." I nodded, knowing she was right. "My mother's coming next weekend," I reminded her. "She's practically bursting with excitement." Lily too. She's never had a grandmother who lives in Florida before. Very exotic. We laughed, the sound mingling in the night air. It felt good. This ease that was slowly growing between us. Not romance. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But friendship, partnership. A shared purpose centered around the remarkable girl sleeping upstairs. "I've been thinking," I said carefully, "about Christmas." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "It's only October." "I know, but I was wondering if you and Lily might consider coming to Aspen with me. I have a cabin there." "Well, not really a cabin, more of a house. But it's in the mountains, with snow and a fireplace and all the Christmas things. We could ski. Or Lily could, once she's cleared by the doctor. You too, if you want. I was rambling, suddenly nervous. Eleanor watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You don't have to answer now, I added hastily. It's just an idea. It's a big step, she said. A family holiday. We are a family, I pointed out. An unconventional one, maybe, but still. She was quiet for a long moment, the porch swing creaking gently beneath us. Lily would love it, she finally said. And I think I would too. Something loosened in my chest. Really, really, she smiled, the moonlight catching in her hair. But no extravagant gifts, James. I mean it. You've already been spoiling her. Define extravagant, I hedged, thinking of the custom ski equipment I'd been researching. She laughed, nudging my shoulder with hers. You're impossible. I'm learning, I corrected. Slowly, but I'm learning. The next morning, I awoke early in the guest room that had gradually accumulated my things. A change of clothes, a spare laptop, a toothbrush in the bathroom. The smell of coffee drifted up from the kitchen, along with the sound of Lily's voice, already chattering away despite the early hour. I padded downstairs to find her at the kitchen table, the walking boot propped on a chair, animatedly explaining her physical therapy exercises to Eleanor, who was packing lunch boxes and nodding along. And then you have to do these weird side steps, like this, she demonstrated with her arms. Marisol says it's for my hip stabilizers. Did you know that's a thing? Hip stabilizers. Good morning, I said, entering the warm circle of their routine. Dad, Lily exclaimed, the words still new enough to send a jolt through me. Can you drive me to school today? I want to show everyone my boot. If it's okay with your mom, I replied, glancing at Eleanor. She handed me a mug of coffee, black, just as I liked it. Fine by me. I have a staff meeting this morning anyway. Then it's settled, I declared, accepting the mug gratefully. The Harrington car service is at your disposal, Miss Lily. She giggled, then grew serious. Is it okay if I tell Miss Patel you're my dad? She still thinks you're just mom's friend. Eleanor and I exchanged glances over Lily's head. Of course it's okay, Eleanor said. Ms. Patel should know the truth. Good, because I already told Grace and Zoe yesterday on FaceTime, and Grace's mom is room parent, so she probably already told everyone anyway. I laughed, settling into a chair at their kitchen table. Sounds like the news is out. Yeah, Lily agreed cheerfully, reaching for her cereal. No going back now. No going back. The phrase echoed in my mind as I sipped my coffee, watching the morning light spill across their kitchen, turning ordinary moments golden. 6 weeks ago, I'd been James Harrington, CEO, defined by my work and wealth. Now I was Lily's dad, still figuring out what that meant, but certain that it was the most important title I'd ever held. Eleanor caught my eye across the table and smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes and hinted at possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider yet. There would be time for that, perhaps. For now, this was enough. Breakfast in a sunny kitchen, a daughter's chatter, the promise of a school day, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. No going back, indeed. Only forward, into this new life that had found me when I least expected it.